Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard along with Bill Stierle, and fair warning, listeners, we each have been a little under the weather, so our voices may be not exactly what they normally are, but we're here for you. And
we are.
Boy, is there a lot to discuss today, Bill. We set up last time that we were going to talk about freedom of speech, and how freedom of speech, while one of our fundamental rights, is also used to purchase truth. And boy, do I see we're seeing a lot of that in our current political climate with impeachment and everything else going on. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. The polarization is now going to continue and escalate, where targeted ads are going to be placed into certain states and certain communities. Their view is going to be skewed towards, the experience of either nothing happening or everything happening. And it's going to be hard for the learner, the listener, to discern whether it's a teacher or a nurse or an engineer or, a graphic artist or, a manager somewhere. All of those different people are going to be saturated with a message. The nothing happened message, or the message that something did happen, but it wasn't all that bad. Or the message that there was something really bad that happened, and the senators didn't have courage or will or political fortitude to stand up to the thing. And so it's going to be really tough, Tom. And it really is. Those people in those swing states, because really it's all about the swing states, are really going to have these consistent messages, these consistent barrage of this way or that way. And the brain really doesn't do well with that kind of messaging. It doesn't.
And boy, there's a lot for people to sort out. I found particularly interesting, maybe we can start with this one, although there's many, I think, examples and with what different senators were saying about their decisions of, voting and such. But let's start with this interesting one that the president's counsel arguing, back when the House was trying to subpoena John Bolton and subpoena documents and subpoena John McGahn, and that one's still working through the courts, all these different both people who had knowledge and documents. The president's counsel, denied, submitting any of those documents or making those witnesses available, saying, well, you can fight it in the courts. And then in the courts, they're arguing that, well, if you don't agree with us, your remedy, your recourse is to impeach the president. And then through that process, you can get the witnesses and the information you want. And of course, then now that we're in an impeachment trial, the president's counsel is arguing, well, you should have done it back when the House was investigating. You should have requested the people and the documents and gotten them back then, not here when we're in the Senate. So they're arguing both sides of it. That's kind of through the looking glass in a bit of purchasing truth in and of itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it causes the opaqueness. It causes the inability to see where truth is because of that separation, because of those different points of view. And with those different points of view, it's hard to get a hold of Is it over here? Is it over here? See, a mind that holds doubt struggles with decision making. A mind that has to fight with skepticism struggles with clarity. It just does. Because if all I got to get to do is get this mind to that place, I don't have to get them to the place of commitment on one side or another in order to impact that human being, to take them out, or get them feel like it's not going to make a difference. And all I got to do is create doubt and skepticism in their body by alternative messages. Does that make some sense, that alternative messages is really what's happening here?
Yes, the injecting the doubt and skepticism makes a lot of sense. It really reminds me what we said way back in one of our earliest episodes, maybe our second or third episode, about tapping the elephant brain, right? That doubt and skepticism that they keep injecting, that moves people in their brains to believe something may not be as true as maybe they first thought it was. It suggests something to them, and if you keep people away from the absolute, then I think the politicians in general have succeeded in their goals.
Yeah. Do you want to hear what the Democrats did wrong during the Senate trial?
I would love to hear that, because I actually listened to quite a bit of it, as much as I could, and both sides. I mean, not just especially when there was all the questions of the senators being asked. I actually listened to that, and especially when they would ask a question of both sides. But anyway, I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but yeah, I would love to hear what the Democrats could have done.
It's still right in alignment with that. So the main thing, Tom, that what I'd like the listener to take away from this is that, number one, it wasn't a court case. The judge was not acting like a normal judge. It wasn't. He wasn't.
That was pretty clear.
He wasn't acting like a normal judge, because a normal judge realizes and sits in the place of, here's two parties that are advocating for their side, and I'm not going to let them step over the line of truth to influence the jury. What jury? The public that's watching the jury. See, if it was a real trial, the judge would have said, that's contempt, that's out of order, that's out of alignment, reframe your question, that's not a true statement. He, maybe not all those words, but legally, the judge would have said, you are not influencing the jury with that story. You're not going to do it because the fact does not support that. We're not going to let you influence the American public by creating a message that's not in alignment with truth. We're not doing it.
That's really illuminating, Bill. I think obviously you're right about that. There is no jury, and they were allowed to make any statement they wanted. There's only one point at which where I saw, Supreme Court Justice John Roberts, who's presiding over this Senate trial, refused to read a question that was submitted to him. Did you see that?
I did.
Where it was submitted by Rand Paul, and it became, he said I forget what he said, he called himself, but the Supreme Court Justice says that the chair essentially, or he, declines to read the question as submitted. And we later learned that Rand Paul had put the name of the suspected whistleblower in the question. In his question, he was trying to say, so can the question might have sounded something like, can the House managers confirm that so-and-so is or is not, the whistleblower, or somehow he wove the whistleblowers, or who he thinks the whistleblower's name is, into the question. And that's really the only thing that I saw John Roberts refuse to do, and take a little control over.
That's right.
And not turn it into a completely out of control circus. Because I think if that question had been read aloud, the House managers would have raised all kinds of heck.
And it was explicitly illegal to do that question. Explicitly, you're not as a deliberative body or as a senator allowed to ask. That's the whole point of having a whistleblower, is to have them protected from the onslaught.
Well, and the other thing that's a complete sideshow in this whole trial is talking about the whistleblower. Anything about the merits of the whistleblower coming forward, if he was partisan or not, if he was if he was biased. I think that, if he had any
Doesn't matter
political, leanings. And I think we can all acknowledge a little bit of truth right here on Purchasing Truth podcast, that every single one of us in the country, anyone listening to this, has some form of a political bias. Either you lean a little bit one way, a little bit the other way, or you're more independently minded. Regardless of what it is, you have that bias, which just means you have certain beliefs.
The belief bias is in place. And I want to confirm, human beings want to confirm their bias rather than investigate, check into, put under a microscope, change their belief. People don't want to change their belief. It's hard to change a belief.
Well, and so what the Republicans were doing throughout this trial, throughout this entire impeachment process, is trying to attack and demonize the whistleblower itself, or the very idea of the whistleblower shedding light on this misconduct by the president, saying that, because we can't, ask questions of the whistleblower, somehow whatever the president did or may have done is unimportant or not the real issue, when the reality is the whistleblower, by the time we're where we are now in this trial, is completely irrelevant, because we have witnesses that have testified as to what the whistleblower had reported anyway. So you no longer need the whistleblower. He was just the spark that lit the fire. Right?
Correct. So all that stuff is really true. And that is when John Roberts stepped in and said, I'm going to act like a real judge in this. And I'm going to stay with the side on the law. I'm not going to go down the disclosure piece. And I am not asking this vertical to be introduced into this trial, because it's not a legal vertical to discuss. It's not a legal vertical to discuss. Rand Paul made it like, see, he's biased. He's not reading my biased question. No, notice the double speak there. That's a 1984 George Orwell, double speak. It's like, that person's biased because he's not illuminating my bias, and that I've overstepped my legality as a lawmaker. That's who these people are. They are lawmakers.
Well, and so I think sometimes they forget that, because I'm sure Rand Paul would argue, hey, John Roberts suppressed my freedom of speech, right? My biased freedom of speech. John Roberts suppressed it by not reading my question. But
Right.
We have these things called laws that do limit freedom of speech in certain situations. I mean, the old classic example, you can't run into a theater and yell fire to disrupt everybody and get away with that because you have freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. It's that type of a situation.
So freedom of speech, right? A building right next to a Jewish temple being decorated and Nazi propaganda swastikas on the outside. Will that ever take place in America?
Will it ever take place in America?
Yeah, right now at this moment, if somebody put up all of the Nazi propaganda,
Right.
swastikas, colors, banners in a building right next to a Jewish temple, will that be allowed?
I think it would be, wouldn't it? Or am I wrong?
Not really. There's
No?
particular laws
I
against
didn't know that.
hate
Okay.
and and expressions. You can't meet your needs in a certain way. You can't meet your needs fully at the expense
Okay.
of another person to scare them.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't really have awareness of those laws. I mean, certainly we see, people can organize and march and speak whatever they want to, like they did in Charlottesville,
Right.
where they can march down the street right in front of a synagogue with their Nazi signs and everything,
Right.
and cheering whatever they want to cheer. So I didn't
Right.
understand about the building next door, but
Yeah, but I mean, is that a tolerable something that our society go, yeah, it's okay that, we're going to allow them the freedom of speech to establish themselves right next to this other thing. And it's really a hard discussion to get ourselves into.
yeah.
And this, how do we um, still meet the individual needs that we would like to hold, yet uphold the greater community needs, state and national needs, in order to create a healthy society that's not escalated, violent, arming themselves no matter what.
So
That's a challenge.
it is a challenge. And so certainly, we have freedoms of speech, but there are limits. So you cannot just meet your needs for freedom of speech at the expense of certain others in certain conditions.
Not fully.
And
You
it's
can't.
interesting because I actually like, and I know it seems like it may seem sort of contrived at this point, but I do like how every political ad that's paid for by an official political campaign, there is a law that says, hey, you just can't say anything you want in a political ad and put it up there without the candidate declaring that they're aware of it, that they have approved it, and that statement has to be made explicitly that I approve this message.
Right.
They have to stand behind their words on those messages. And so very interestingly, if you actually study the difference between let's say candidate Trump's official campaign television commercials versus and this is even the president today. I mean, he is a candidate also, right? And then candidate Trump's, what he says from the pulpit at a campaign rally are miles apart.
Miles and miles apart. Yeah. So Tom, let's go back to the senators.
Yes.
What could they have done differently? What could have the House managers done differently?
Oh my gosh, I would love to know that. But I think from my perspective, they made a very strong case. It's just that, well, I have
rules, laws, and facts don't count as much.
They really did not. This is a prime example, right?
Okay, good. So look at that whole thing. Rules.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Laws, which are rules.
And facts.
Facts and truth don't count as much.
I would agree. I mean, what this whole exercise has proven is that, the party in control of the body, in this case the Senate, can make the outcome whatever they want, despite those three things you just mentioned: rules, laws, facts, evidence. And that is a very discouraging place to be.
It's a discouraging place to be. Now let's talk about the solution,
Okay.
because the solution is really where we need to land. There are a couple steps that need to take place to restore truth here. Step number one, state and observe the message, the untrue message. So it might sound like this. I'm Adam Schiff. You know, the other side would like you to believe and really embrace that for us not to look at this and for us not to call any new witnesses. Now, watch the next sentence. I hear how important that belief is, because this president would like the level of freedom that every American gets about expressing themselves any way they want, or getting support from anybody they would like, even if it's for the country. Seems like he would like to be able to do that as a part of his skilled negotiation and his talent in negotiating as a business person. In the business world, many times they do a tactic called quid pro quo, where businesses trade things for each other in order to get fairness. Now I'm not talking about what he did as much. Now I'm talking about fairness. You know what fairness and protection looks like to me and for the American public is for only our votes to be influenced through with our country, because there's many other countries that don't like our belief system. And if you ask them for support, they're going to help you because they don't like that we all have a voice here. And they'd be very happy to influence the voter by creating and putting money towards messages that are in favor of their country. A big part of it is us protecting ourselves from countries that don't like us that much, or don't like our system of things, or aren't really appreciative of the way we do things. And I'm not sure that it would really work for us as a nation moving forward to have that level of influence. But I'm guessing that the president might be feeling a little doubtful and scared that he can do it on his own inside the United States, that he might need some foreign support. And I can really appreciate how he would like to get support from others outside the nation in order to support his reelection. It's so important because he is a fighter. He is somebody that wants to do whatever it takes to get it elected. Regrettably, the House is really bound by a set of rules, and we really don't want to be here fighting this battle. But regrettably, he crossed a line that really made it important for us to say he crossed the line. Now, I'm guessing the senators are going to vote, and they might not have the courage or will to do that because they want to support his decision-making and this style of decision-making. Regrettably, this is not a democratic style of decision-making that he's choosing. And I guess if at the end of this trial that they choose to vote to support freedom of speech from the president, that he gets to choose to cross any rule or break any rule he would like, I guess they could do that, but I'm not sure if we're going to be a stronger nation. And when they do, and when they vote to acquit him, which most likely they're going to. Notice I'm playing into the future narrative. I just broke my speech right there.
Yeah. No, I could hear where you're going, and it certainly is compassionate and empathetic, and you're definitely making everybody hear and think differently about this for sure. pointing out the needs and the president's needs, and pointing out that it's, not in alignment with our systems of government, our republic, all that. I agree with all that. And certainly that would be a powerful speech, but it certainly appears that the senators are all caring more about not crossing Trump than upholding our laws and the Constitution itself.
Okay, so I appreciate that, but what I just did was try to activate their integrity.
I agree, and I believe you did that in what you said.
And because the jury is the people on the TV watching this, having compassion and empathy for the 10 to 20% of Republicans I need to move over to my side to vote for me next time. Those are the people I'm interested in. Essentially, I gave a pass. Yeah, they're probably going to vote. They're not interested in really what truth looks like.
Well,
they're interested in what a win looks like.
Right. And actually, that's the best part about what you did, I think. And Bill, I truly appreciate your perspective and what you said there. And I believe you had the House managers sought your counsel, they could have, made much more effective, speeches on the Senate floor. But I think what it really does is it gives more ammunition for the Democrats in all the different districts around the country, all the different states around the country who are running for election in 2020 to unseat Republicans, to be able to, you just gave them talking points for that reelection, right? And you gave them messaging that they can use, where, they were obviously more interested in this than that, right? Would you think it really, if the House managers had spoken that way, you think it would have actually changed some of the votes on even to see witnesses?
Yeah, maybe, because if you have compassion and for empathy for how tough it is for those people to stay out of integrity. Now, if I want to put a nail in the coffin for the other side, it might sound like this. It's just like in the playoff game between the Saints and the Rams, where there was clearly a pass interference that took place. But because it wasn't called, the play stood as an incomplete pass. Meanwhile, if we look at the rule, it was pass interference. And regrettably, the Saints had to live with that decision, and the Rams were able to take advantage of that situation and go on to play in the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Now, I just took about 20 million football fans and put them in the acknowledgement. And I guess after this whole situation is going to take place, I guess we're going to have to put some rules in place in order for this not to happen again. So now all of a sudden I'm going like, oh yeah, this thing took place. You would like us not to look? You don't want us to do review? I guess we're not going to have a review on this play because it's not in the rule book. We're not going to look at witnesses. We're not going to play the tape back. We're not going to put a referee, or, with all due respect, the justice in the referee box to look at the rule that was broken. We're not going to put him in that place, because if you as a body vote 50-50 and we're deadlocked, he has to become the referee to look in the box and decide on which way it goes. And I'm guessing the Republicans don't want to put him in that place because he would need to be the referee, and he's not the referee in this setting. In a normal criminal case, he would be the referee, but in this place, he's not a referee, and you don't want to put him in that place to decide, here's the rule and here's how it's broken. Then we're going to get to see the witnesses. We get to replay the situation. Can you imagine if they stuck that metaphor on the Senate floor?
Oh, it'd be perfect. You probably would get so many independents and even a number of Republicans in Louisiana certainly saying,
oh my
hey,
gosh,
yeah, you know
they're
what?
furious
The rule was broken and we didn't get into there. So the president really broke the rules
He broke
here.
the rule.
And that we're just going to give him a pass.
We're going to give him a pass.
You know, so, or he's going to, or get away. What really it says is he's going to get away with it despite the rules, right?
Right.
So that clearly paints it as wrong.
Now, as a congressman, now notice I'll take the roll back up. Now, as a congressman, it was my and our duty to point out this rule that was broken and come to this deliberative body to see if they're going to have the courage to be like the referee, to look underneath the review. And that's what the witness, calling the witness will do. But it looks like they're not even willing to look underneath the review box. So all of a sudden, Tom, the simplicity of that metaphor for the 100 million people that watch the Super Bowl, or the 70 million people that watched the NFC playoff game last year, would have been going like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we're doing here. And listen, as a good fan and somebody that fights for democracy, I'm going to get on the field tomorrow, whether or not the Republicans choose to look underneath the box. I'm going to be fighting for the rule to change from this moment on. This does not go away with a no call, because the Republicans are making a no call on a rule that has been broken. And I'm guessing that our democracy is going to be stronger, at least from my perspective, when the American public goes to vote on who they would like to change the rules for next year. Or are you going to leave the rule makers, because that's what we are as lawmakers? Are you going to let the rule makers to keep the rules the same and allow things like this to take place in the future? Are we going to allow a very rich person in any country, in Russia or China or India or any country at all? I would probably pick natural enemies here.
Yeah.
Any country at all to take place? Are you going to allow that rich person to influence a district because they're the person they would like is running in that office, and you're going to allow millions of dollars to be funneled into that? I guess right now that's the way the current system is set up. And I don't want to not look at the rule and have a second shot at it. But I guess that is what my job is going forward after the Senate. Notice I'm in agreement with it. After the Senate has voted to let him off, I guess we're going to need some new rules for this. And I guess the senators, if they have their jobs next year, if they have their jobs after 2020, notice I just peed all over them.
Yeah.
If they have their jobs in 2020, because if they keep their jobs, then we're going to keep not looking to enforce the rule, or not having a second shot to deal with the rule, because this is what this is. The impeachment is just like a play that is under review, and having a witness is the replay that would make the difference. So we can slow down, look at it frame by frame, and see for ourselves with the people that are in the room. When did it start? What was the level of intensity? how much pressure that was on there, and they have the paperwork and they didn't give it to us. So I guess they're not allowing us to look under it. So I guess the senators get to choose. The Republican senators here get to choose on whether or not they want to look under the hood. Look under the viewer. So you want to keep the metaphor.
Yeah, no, the football metaphor is great because I think football is so universal across America, and it crosses party lines. And like you say, the team sport nature of things, I think that the way people think and support their team, there's so many similarities. We've used that analogy here on the show a few times before. So that actually would have been brilliant, I have to say.
And it's compassionate for the loser. Listen, I want to have compassion for myself right now, because the chances of us winning here are pretty slim, because they have the votes. All they got to do is stay on party lines. So regrettably, just like the Saints, I have to deal with it and wake up the next day and fight again and get ready for the next season. Because as a Democrat, I'm fighting for democracy right now. Regrettably, I'm doubting the officiating that is going on inside this deliberative body. It doesn't look like they want us to look underneath the viewer to look at the play again.
So Bill, this is brilliant, and I love it. I think it's right on point. So then how do you square the circle of the senators who have come all the way from back before impeachment proceedings started to say, well, there was no quid pro quo. There's no evidence of that. And then there becomes evidence of a quid pro quo. Okay, well, there's evidence of quid pro quo, and now they've come all the way to now several senators, including Lamar Alexander, who was one of the people that potentially was considering voting for witnesses, saying, you know what, I don't need any more witnesses because, I agree that the president did what he's accused of. He did, he did those things. It's not a dispute. Therefore, we don't need witnesses. But I just don't think it rises to the level of impeachment. So they keep moving that goalpost and now saying that it's okay that he did it. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, because we just came off the Super Bowl weekend. Yeah, it's kind of like the play where the Chief had the tip of the ball cross the line and the foot hit the out of bounds line about the
saw one. That. Yep.
So it's kind of like that referee is at a disadvantage point. Now, here's the weird part. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really screw with the rules committee now in the NFL right now. Okay. They have the pylon.
Yep.
And they have the pylon cam looking this way right now.
Right.
Why don't they put a pylon cam looking down the other line? And they would be able to look at the two pieces at the same time and really granular get it. Because that referee who is doing their best, just like, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound unsettling, just like the Republicans are doing their best to hold the play in place where clearly there's pass interference here. It's like, but if that referee is in such a disadvantage because he's looking for the tip of the ball, he can't necessarily see the tip of the ball and see the foot at the same time. He's got to make his best judgment there. And he sees the tip cross and he can't see this. So he says to himself, it's got to be reviewed. So he raises his hand and says touchdown. Because now he knows it goes under review. And it was close enough with the evidence that they had to go, yeah, Yeah, that is as close of call as you can get. Next year, if they choose to, if Democrats own the Senate next year after 2020, they get to put the pylon cam going in the opposite direction. And then they can literally take two pieces of footage and track them on real time.
Yeah.
And say, this is where that thing is. Make sense?
It does make sense. I hear you.
And that's what a lawmaker does. A lawmaker is writing and using words and using choices to define the stability and the structure for society. They're giving us the guidelines, because if the guidelines are not fully in place, then what winds up happening is society has a denigrating or degeneration process to it. Because then all of a sudden it's like, well, there's one rule for this one person, and there's not, I don't know if I'm going to get caught, and this person got caught. So even if I do get caught, I'll get an attorney to be able to do this to get me off of the thing that I got caught with.
Yeah. I hear you, Bill, about, there will be consequences for the senator's actions. I think most notably at the voting booth in November 2020, and then in the next election after that, I think that these senators are going to end up being accountable for their vote here.
Only for awake people, only for people that are pay attention to the rules, and the ones that are that 10 or 20% of the nation that are interested in exploring the ability or belief that, and you could see it if you interview both the far right people and the far left people, you'll see the polarity. They go like, I want the rule to be this way.
Sure.
And that's not the way we work here. I want the rule to be this way. And when you present them with this, they say, I don't care. I'm a Rams fan. My team is going to the Super Bowl and your team lost, and too bad. And it's not that they're fighting the 2020 the 26th. They're not trying to retry the 2016 election. What they're doing is setting rules up, or attempting to setting rules up, so that a foreign country cannot influence our social media.
No question.
That's like, we need to put this under review.
I agree completely.
The other side goes, no, I don't want that under review. Are you kidding me? They voted in my favor. I need any foreign help I need in order to influence it. I don't care. Why?
Well,
because,
well, and of course they're not saying that, even though they're probably thinking that, and so there's a lot that obviously isn't said. Speaking of freedom of speech in open spaces, the senators are not saying they're afraid to cross Trump. They're just twisting themselves into pretzels not to cross Trump and try to appear like they have some integrity. So here's the thing that I think was disappointing to me, and I think you saw this too, Bill, is isn't it Lamar Alexander, the senator who was interviewed this weekend?
Absolutely.
And he said, why did he not vote for witnesses? And he said, well, because I didn't need witnesses. He did it, I agree, but it doesn't rise to the level of impeachment, is basically what he said. But then he was asked a question, but, there's a big difference between President Trump and, say, President Clinton. President Clinton expressed remorse for his actions that led to his impeachment, where President Trump has not expressed any remorse for the actions that led to his impeachment. He's, in fact, quite done the opposite and said, there's nothing wrong with what I did. What I did was perfect. And Lamar Alexander was asked, I think it was by Chuck Todd, do you really believe the president has learned anything and that he wouldn't do this again? Or is he now emboldened? He's going to keep doing it more. And Lamar Alexander actually said something to the effect of, oh, I think he will think twice before doing it again. And honestly, I felt that was laughable.
Well, it's also, there's a naivete to it. There is, and it's also old school integrity, by the way. He's thinking that the person is going to act like an adult, that is going to act like a accountable person. And one of the things that we've learned through tweets is accountability is not a strong suit. Accountability of being wrong is not a strong suit. The clearest example of this is the Alabama hurricane thing.
Oh yeah, with the Sharpie putting
all he had to do is say, I misspoke. I threw Alabama in. I'm a human being. I make mistakes. And it would have all been over. And instead, it was a month and a half of Sharpie Gate, and that is the length that he goes to stay in the place of, I'm in charge. I get respect. What I say is go, and what I say is true. Even if it's at the expense of all the truth finders that are in front of me, that I rely upon. He's done it with his general. You guys haven't won anything. It's like, you don't know how hard it is, dude.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stories where his bias about the way the world works can be solved by his way of thinking. Meanwhile, if you fly him in and put him in a really hard decision-making situation, he crumbles and he leaves. He walks out. He won't stay in a hard situation. He can't stay focused that long, regrettably. He can't process a call.
Oh, he can't. No. Well, so it's interesting, Bill. I think you may be correct that Lamar Alexander's statement may be an old school integrity and somewhat naive, that he actually thinks the president is going to somehow learn from this entire impeachment episode. Maybe I'm more cynical. I don't think this president is actually going to learn from it. I think he's going to be emboldened by it. But so I'd like to read to you the statement that Marco Rubio made about his decision not to vote for witnesses, and because I think it's very telling. It's very interesting. He said, just because actions meet a standard of impeachment does not mean it's in the best interest of the country to remove a president from office. I will not vote to remove the president because doing so would inflict extraordinary and potentially irreparable damage to our already divided nation. That's his statement. So he's saying, just because he did it and it's impeachable, it's gonna do more damage to the country to remove him. I actually think that he's making a statement that's trying to be married to two different wives, honestly.
Right, and he's scared. He's scared.
Yeah.
And the way to call that call that sentence out is that. So, Senator Rubio. See, I'll be empathetic to him. So, Senator Rubio, could you be feeling scared that a vote that is in alignment with you feel scared because you really want safety for the nation, and you want to keep people from getting hurt, and you have a thought that if you vote, in a way that's in alignment with the law, that people will get physically hurt, and you'd really want some safety and some peace to come back to the nation. And by voting this way, it's more out of protection for the people that might get hurt if the divided country becomes really angry and furious, and you want to make sure people don't get hurt. Is that correct?
All right, I'll be Rubio and I'll say yes.
Yes. So I see that you're going to vote to protect people that would be affected by the violence that would take place if you were in integrity with your vote. You are just looking for a peaceful settlement to this, and this is the best way that you can keep peace in place. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying to him, if you vote this way, Trump's going to come after you. I'm saying you're voting this way to protect certain violent people to not only act against you, but also act against others that they see as opposite with a violent act. And that's if it was really explained that way or empathized that way, that's not a bad vote. It's not a correct vote.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad vote. It's a vote that says, okay, all right, this guy is stoking the base so much that he's invigorating the fringe. And he's invigorating the fringe of the right Republicans. I'm going to just make up a story now. The ones with guns, the individual with a gun that says, oh, those people will take it into their own hands and make it this one senator or this one congressman's fault and take violence out on that person. Now, we don't have to go too far back to look at the Gabby Gifford case.
Sure.
Where she got shot at one of her rallies. All she was doing is talking, and this guy shot her.
Right.
And the rhetoric up to that point was violent Fox narrative that incited that. And they had to tone it back and stop. They didn't go against the guy. They did kind of call it out for a short time as being wrong.
Right.
But then they went back to just enough not to be violent, but just enough to infuriate. See, they're keeping their foot on the gas pedal inside that bubble to keep that voting group in place. The only problem is it's that it's also affecting the other group that we'll have, you and I'll have to see after November. Will it be enough to invigorate that group to go like, yeah, it's not going to happen on our watch this time? You know, it's not, we're not going with this guy. You know, we're not going with this guy. You know, yes, we're a Republican, but you know, and I think there's the 10 to 20 or 30, 10 or 20% that'll swing over to the other side. And so that's the thing to, you know, to make place, you know, to really be, you know, to have awareness that, you know, I mean, you know, just about everyone is polling against, all the top four candidates are polling greater than Trump, but the consolidation, you know, none of those percentages are leaving the party at the current moment. There's only which one of this group is going to go over to this other side. And it just depends on that philosophy or that belief structure.
Well, and as we've said in the past, it may end up not being as much a reaction to what's taken place with trying to hold Trump accountable for his past actions or not. It may end up happening if we can get a candidate who's going to set a vision that is better for America than the vision we currently have. So
well, let's pick that up next time. Let's pick that up next time is how do we create a vision where the referees get together at the end of the game and say, you know what, we need a new rule about this. And we need to put some really solid rules in place. So we've got to make this the level of criminality, because right now it's not fully at the level of criminality, that if a president does this, they're jailed for a year or 2 or 5. If Lev Parnas and Igor Furman do this from a foreign country, they elect a thing by giving them $250,000 like they did, or whatever the number was, that they get 20 years in jail. I mean, it's gotta have this severity to it,
right?
So that it literally is, this rule is so extraordinary that we do not want this in place, and it's got to be severe. I mean, Manafort's trying to wait it out. Roger Stone is going to wait it out, and they have a few years. They might get pardoned at the end. If they do, that's a whole nother problem.
Sure.
So,
all right.
I mean, anyway, so more to come on how the rules will be rewritten in a way to restore trust and fairness and integrity moving forward.
I like it. Okay, Bill.
All right,
thanks
Tom.
so much. Until then.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.